Israel is expanding its ground offensive into Gaza in order, it says, to root out Hamas fighters, as President Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel will not agree to a ceasefire, adding, "This is the time for war."
Well, humanitarian agencies say aid trucks are being delayed into Gaza and hospitals are overflowing with wounded civilians and displaced people. But there was some good news overnight as Israeli teenage hostage Ori Megadish was rescued from Hamas by the IDF and reunited with her family. Well, we're joined now by Elliot Sorene. He's an Israeli trauma and orthopedic surgeon. Elliot, news of Ori's rescue will be well received in Israel, won't it?
Oh, it was, after 24 days of horror, it was unbelievable. The happiness. And, you know, it's a different Israel now after what happened on October the 7th. And we saw that yesterday after Ori's release. Everyone's celebrating the streets, ultra-Orthodox, secular people. Israel has changed. We're seeing more ultra-Orthodox Israeli Arabs volunteering, wanting to serve after the horrors of what happened on the 7th, including the murder of Israeli Arabs, Bedouin families killed. The country is united. We have a national unity government at the moment. Things have changed. And we're at a time of war. And the country is united. We're doing very well. And it seems like the release of Ori is the start, and this is the beginning, and we're hoping for better things.
And just for our viewers who weren't watching the last time you were on the show, your son was actually at the festival that was attacked by Hamas. He survived, but he had friends there who sadly passed away.
Listen, for us, this is 1,400 deaths on that one day, murdered, in a manner which we have not seen before. I myself operated on wounded from the Second Intifada, from Hamas bombings and shootings. This was a whole different level of brutality and atrocities. Just to understand, 1,400 people for a country like Israel, that's a tragedy 15 times 9/11 was for America, if you compare with the population. Everyone knows people who was killed. Everyone was at funerals. The country has changed, and this is why we are in this war at the moment.
Elliot, I have to say, the response to you being on last time was phenomenal, and I'm absolutely delighted, as Nick is, to bring you back. There's so much I want to ask you in the right way. I have a very good friend who, a Jewish lady with a family, she was telling me at the weekend, I want to get some idea, not being any one-sided or the other, but I want to get some idea of what it's like to be Jewish right now. We've heard about anti-Semitism and the rise. Her son plays in a Jewish football league. This was widely reported overnight. They've played every week for years. He's 14 years of age.
Yes.
They turned up to play on Saturday, and the parents of the opposing team, non-Jewish, refused to allow their kids to play. People are being attacked in the street. They are being... We'll talk about Gaza in a sec.
Yeah. What
is it like being a Jew in Britain today?
Listen, we're seeing Jew hatred reaching the levels of the 1930s. We're seeing thousands in the streets marching, calling for the eradication of Jews from the river to the sea. We're calling to globalise we're hearing groups calling to globalise the Intifada. So the Intifada is the terror attacks on civilians. We're hearing groups wanting to replicate this in London. It's very shocking. I realise that many people are naive. I realise many people have very little understanding of the Middle East. But there's a lot of open hatred. And we're seeing this also from those who call themselves liberals, supporting the ideology of Hamas. The Hamas ideology is the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood that calls for the eradication of Jews and also Christians and also LGBT, also obviously no women's rights, child marriages, honour killings, everything that goes against liberal society, yet we're seeing a large amount of liberals supporting this evil ideology, an ideology which is illegal in this country, Hamas, and also illegal, it's important to say, in most Arab countries, whether it be Tunisia or Egypt or Bahrain or the Emirates. These organisations are outlawed, but yet we're seeing sympathy in the United Kingdom. It's astonishing. It is astonishing.
Elliot, I've got some breaking news I'd like you to respond to. That's right. The Israeli Defence Forces have just announced warned of a hostile aircraft intrusion near the Red Sea city of Eilat. Sirens sounded in the area of Eilat, southern Israel, concerning a hostile aircraft intrusion. That's been written on Telegram. It did not go into further details, but said more information will be released shortly. That is breaking news on Talk Today. The IDF have warned of hostile aircraft incursions near the Red City town of Eilat.
Yeah, so we see attempts to infiltrate the airspace in the south and in the north with drones. There's nothing new here. We're aware that these terror groups also operate in the Sinai Peninsula, in spite of the fact that Egypt is very tough on them, but it's very difficult to know where this is coming from. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And just to go back to what you said earlier, last time you were on the show, you spoke about almost the footballification of this war. It's become one side versus another, and it's just simply not, it's not as simple as that. Also, I think we've got to try and distinguish as well, people's ignorance and naivety to people's knowingly supporting horrific terror groups. It's a very difficult space to navigate at the moment. So I can't imagine what it must be like doing that whilst also being Jewish.
Well, it's very easy to navigate in one respect. These terror groups, they are fingers on the hand of the Islamist regime in Iran. These groups kill more Muslims than anyone else. If someone cares about Muslims, they would know that the Islamist regime in Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, these organizations predominantly kill Muslims. Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas in Gaza, sat in prison for killing fellow Arabs. And while he was in prison with his own hands, he killed 3 prisoners. He's never actually killed a Jew himself. And that's the head of Hamas in Gaza. If someone cared about humanity or cared about predominantly Muslim lives that are destroyed by these terror groups, they would certainly call for Hamas to surrender. And that is what needs to happen.
Elliot, I brought this up earlier and I want to take your take on this. Trevor Trove, really interesting article in The Sun this morning. Hamas has budget of over 1.5 billion quid per year to finance their atrocities. They believe the money is pouring in from Qatar, from other areas in the Middle East. I have said, as has Nick, that what happened 3 weeks ago, and your son, let's repeat this, Ariel managed to avoid and get out of that music festival. 1,400 people were not just murdered, they were brutally, brutally murdered. It was genocidal. And I understand completely Israel's desire to do something about that and get the hostages home. My final question would be this. As the conflict evolves, and Netanyahu says overnight, no ceasefire, and people jump up and down, what is your response as a Jewish person who's worked as a surgeon in both Israel and Gaza? What is your answer to the people who say, this has to stop, this human conflict is appalling? I'd like you to put it into words, because I guess you do it far better than Nick and I.
OK, I'll put it into words. In the Middle East, you have to speak in Arabic. لازم نحكي بالعربي. The word ceasefire means hudna. A ceasefire is when you're feeling weak, you want a ceasefire so you can gather strength to fight your enemy. This is not what we want. We don't want a hudna. We don't want a ceasefire. Sometimes you have to do war. We don't like war. My great-grandfather fought in the First World War in the British military. Both of my grandfathers fought in the Second World War. I've fought in combat. My son has fought in combat. No one takes pleasure from this. This enemy needs to be eradicated, and we will continue. We do not want a hudna. And another phrase in Arabic, ma'il hayat al-waqit, which means we stand with who is strong. The second Hamas is defeated, people stand. In the Middle East, strength is respected, weakness is not. And as Winston Churchill said, you mentioned about money, funding of these terror groups. Winston Churchill said, you don't feed the crocodile hoping that it'll eat you last. And that is what we've all been doing. We've been feeding this crocodile, whether it be the Islamist regime in Iran, Qatar also funding this. It's an indecent tango which the West has been playing for the last, since 1979. We got to stop. Okay, just as in Arab countries, these organisations are outlawed, they need to be outlawed in the West, and they can be removed. I heard a speaker before saying you can't get rid of this ideology. You can. We got rid of Nazi ideology in Germany. The Germans denazified. I realise the majority in Gaza do support Hamas. I realise the majority voted for Hamas in democratic elections. But this can change.
Elliot, Sorene, thank you so much
Amazing.
for joining us
Thank
as well.
you, my friend,
Fascinating.
for coming in. Really appreciate it.